Are you hearing me? Good. Right. I guess the presentation was already made, so I'm not gonna dwell on that. But I am from the Danish Center for Prevention of Extremism and Radicalization, and I'm going to. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Like this, is that better? Oh, cool, thank you. So I'm going to, and the translation is also going good? Okay, thank you. Right, thank you for having me here. Thank you, Claudi, and thank you, Betty Benslama. I will be talking briefly about the Danish Center for Prevention, the Danish model, and then I'll make a bit more effort to explain how we train mentors to work with solution-focused work on life skills in a mentoring program in order to prevent radicalization and extremism. And I hope there will be time to just do a brief show of a case where the method was applied. So, just to make it real brief, we have like 5 core tasks. We have the primary task of strengthening research-based efforts and bridge from research to prevention practice. So basically, making what you've been talking about for 3.5 days here reach all the way out to the pointed end of the stick, so to speak, so that people working in the field can profit from that. We do a lot of counseling of all 98 municipalities in Denmark and other actors in the field. We develop tools and methods. We do a lot of upgrading courses for professionals. And we have a very close cooperation with the National Police, Security and Intelligence Services, and the Ministry of Education. Now, and that may sound a bit technical, and I suppose it is, because then where is the center? Well, the center is, in fact, in the center. If you look at the model here, you will see that there are 3 pillars. On your left, you have the Ministry of Justice. In the middle, Society and Welfare, which is where the center is placed. And that is basically because we very much regard prevention of extremism as a social prevention approach. So over time, the efforts to prevent extremism have been placed either in the Ministry of Social Affairs or, as we are now, in the Ministry of Integration. But it's very much related with social work. As of 2016, the 3rd pillar, Ministry of Education, was added because the 2 first pillars that created the original model have been there for 10 years almost. And then in 2016, it was decided to bring education on board because of the realization of the necessity of having really early prevention, also in the primary schools and upper and secondary schools. If you look slightly down towards the left center, you'll see something called info houses, a little similar to what the colleague from Holland was talking about. The info houses is the structure where cases of concern, in terms of concern for radicalization, are being handled, discussed and referred to. There are 12 info houses in Denmark, 1 per police district. And then there is an info house in each municipality to work on case level. How's it going? Am I making sense? Right, now digging deeper into the model, you'll find a history of almost 40 years. Schools, social authorities and police have been working closely together in crime prevention and delinquency for as far back as 1975. So the legislation, when it became necessary to take measures in terms of preventing radicalization and extremism, some of the legislation and the groundworks was already there, such as, at an early stage anyway, exchange of information for preventive measures, not for investigation, is possible between schools, social authorities and police. And from 2004, experiments were made to bring mental health into the prevention work broadly in terms of crime to start out with, but has also proven very important in terms of prevention of radicalization. So that's not the SSP, but the PSP, psychiatry, social, and police. And it was implemented by law in 2009. And as you can see, we've done several courses. As late as in 2016-17, we did regional courses for the, throughout the country within forensic psychiatry, and we did that together with the security and intelligence services. Now, that may sound strange, but in Denmark, the security and intelligence services and police has a prevention unit also, similar to the work that we're doing. However, we are very much there to serve and help the municipalities. Now, digging a bit deeper into one of the methods that we've developed over time, I'll talk a bit and try to explain how the mentoring through solution-focused work with life skills is put together. It's actually not just one method. When we made this, we wanted to look into something that practitioners could use without actually having to be, no offense intended, psychologists or psychiatrists to start out with, because a lot of the people that receive training in this method, where I come from, are caseworkers, people working in job centers, teachers, and also health workers, nurses, for instance. So we had to find something in the mix that would both be relatively easy to become acquainted with, usable, but also target the risk and protection factors that we believe are involved when talking about risks of radicalization. So we landed on combining three methods. First one being, it's called here balanced risk assessment. It is in effect science of safety, which is a method dating back as far as the 90s, developed in Australia by two Australian social workers. And that is on board because science of safety was already there in much of the social care and prevention system in Denmark already. So that is there to provide the framework initially to identify the individual's situation, both personally and socially, to get an idea of what challenges and resources are at play. And then, as a feature specifically oriented towards prevention of radicalization, we introduced life psychology in close cooperation with a professor, Preben Bertelsen is his name in Danish, from the Department of Psychology and Behavioral Sciences at Aarhus University. Now that pertains to both the psychology of personality and social psychology. So those are kind of the core features in that, in the headline, life psychology. It serves as an underlying analysis, and there are some layers that I'll come back to and deep digger into later. But they provide the framework for identifying risk factors and protective factors. And then the final method in the overall method is called solution-based approach. You may probably have heard it, of it. It's a dialogue tool so that mentors are trained to talk in a non-frightening way, so to speak, with the mentee and to build a basis for interaction, communication, and relationship, because mentor-mentee relationships tend to go on for quite some time in these cases. It's very much along the lines of motivational interviewing and the whole thinking within the regime of positive psychology. Now, this was built in or constructed in a bottom-up approach. In 2012, we did a pilot in 4 municipalities, and then inspired by the mentor program that was already going on in Aarhus, which is the second largest city in Denmark. We looked into that, and then the method as such was put together in 2015, and all the time working along, developing it with the people who are actually going to use it at the end of it. And then in 2018, we are at a level of having trained 141 local mentors and parent coaches, because this method is applied both individually for mentors and to be worked with in families with 1 or 2 parents, for instance. So it goes from local level to national level and back again in terms of development. It's still making sense? Yes. Good. So signs of safety, the one that some of you may have heard of already, or in this context, a balanced risk assessment tool really consists of two practical tools. One here, quite sort of simple for the initial part of a risk assessment and planning. It can be done with the mentee, with a young person or an older person for that matter, between mentor and mentee. And the principles are define or describe the causes for concern, look at what works, what could be possible goals, and what agreements could there be in relation to any plan. Now, that is a simple version for the initial part. And then as the work progresses and the analysis go deeper into what the problem's root causes may be and what the goals should be, then 4 more layers are added. Fundamental life skills, deeper psychological factors, factors in surroundings, and behavior. The final one, behavior, is very much the mentor's observation in his work with the mentee. The 3 upper ones has systematic within the method that I'll introduce briefly. And that pertains to life psychology as a methodology. Now, the first one, the first sort of basis of analysis is about fundamental life skills. Now, this system or this method is based on the idea that all of us face 3 overall life tasks. We need to be able to participate in where we are in our life. We need to attune, meaning adjust our participation, and we need to be able to navigate between different perspectives. And that all adds up to 10 fundamental life skills. Being part of good and close relations, maintaining frame around your life, participating in a personal way and as a part of a community, be engaged and absorbed in something, finding realistic and efficient approaches to the goals you want to achieve, consider norms and values, have awareness to nonverbal communication and the effect that your nonverbal communication has, taking one's thoughts, feelings, and goals into perspective, others' thoughts and feelings, and understanding the important rules of system and life around you. So this is basically what we all have to deal with every day, so to speak. Now, in order for that to make or work or happen, the basic 5 for each skill is also an important part of the analysis. So to what degree does the mentee actually want to achieve a certain goal? What ability does he or she have? What external possibilities are there in fact the possibilities that are needed to achieve the goal in the immediate surroundings? Or is that person already being acknowledged for doing it? Or is that person doing it already? So those are the basic 5 in there. Now, that comes down to this. So we're getting closer to what you might call a wheel of skills. The skill set is the same as introduced before. But if you look in the middle, you will see that this is not a model designed to achieve perfection in life. This is a model designed to achieve a good enough grip of your own life and the common life, so that it's about your ability to participate in the life around you. So it's about participation, attunement, and perspective distributed on 10 different life skills. So how does that sound so far? You good with that? Yeah? Okay. Now, then sit back, take a deep breath. Yeah? Okay, good. Because Once we add what you already saw, the basic 5, to this, it looks like this. And then some of you may think, what on earth is that? It's basically what you just saw, but combined both skills and the basic 5, so that if you look at the one, number 1, dealing with relations, not entirely irrelevant if you need to change your environment, your immediate environment. As someone in risk of radicalization, you might need new friends. Being part of a close and good relation, do you want that? Do you have the ability, the opportunity? Are you being met in your efforts already? Or are you already doing it? And how is that looking on a range from 0 to 4? What's the score? Now, ideally, you make this assessment with your mentee. So it's between mentor and mentee, so that the person involved becomes involved in his own plan. And it's also a measurement of, a way of measuring how to prioritize the goals that you want to work with. So you're not working with 10 different skills at the same time. You need to find what 1, 2, or 3 are the most important ones. Behind that is a protective, risk and protective factor framework for analysis also, referring to 4 different styles: cognitive, dynamic, mirroring, and idealizing. I won't go into a lot of detail on that, but those are important in terms of when the work between mentor and mentee goes on for a certain length of time. You need to revisit the analysis to find out how things are actually going. Now, as you can see, the biological basis, body and mind, is not in here, so it doesn't go as deep as that, so to speak. Now, how does that look in terms of risk and protection? This is not something that you doubt. I don't doubt that you already know this, but what you're seeing here is also part of the training that mentors get, okay? So just to make sure that we're on the same page, that risk factors increase the probability that a person will develop problems, and protective factors increase the probability that a person will become well-functioning. So it's not a predictor, it's an indicator when you're looking at factors, yeah? So in order to carry out the analysis into detail, you would be looking at each of the styles: cognitive, dynamic, deep and personal in terms of mirroring and idealization. Again, scoring 0 to 4 to assess what needs to be done in terms of working towards a goal. Now, and the same goes for the factors in surroundings. And just as an example, if you look at the cognitive style, you will have a factor that at one end would have a risk factor, and at the opposite end of the trajectory would have a protective factor. So intolerance, being intolerant, could be a goal of working towards tolerant to ambiguity. Jumps to conclusion could be, there could be a need of working towards consider carefully. Fundamentalism, you could need to work towards openness. Monomania, towards dealing with diverse perspectives. We're all on the same trajectory on each of the factors. And those were factors that were put in place in order to make sure that the assessment in determining the goals would come as close to follow how the development of the goals were as possible. And then finally, I won't go into much detail on how the means of communication between mentor and mentee is introduced to the mentors, but I will then save time and introduce a case. So the principles though are here, yeah. So the solution-based approach principles in terms of communication between mentor and mentee are that in order to have that dialogue fruitfully between mentor and mentee, the idea here is that all people have ideas and wishes concerning their future. Maybe not the same as you would want them to have, but they still have them. The goals of the family and the young person is the driving force of the change. You should remember small steps and signs as you move. Small steps and signs of changes are important. And so, most importantly, there are always times when the problem that you have identified is not there. So look for exceptions and make them a little larger. Even though problems can be complex, they do not necessarily require complex solutions. And if what you're doing doesn't work, do something else. If it works, do more of it. That's a good point, isn't it? Right, so in order to make that a little more tangible, just a brief recap of what we've done so far. We've trained 141 mentors and parent coaches. There are currently 42 cases, this is 2017 numbers, of mentoring and or parent coaching begun. Some of the mentors function as coordinators and match mentor and mentee, not always easy, so that requires additional training. We want the same method to be used across the country to compare, in order to be able to compare. And we support the implementation also on IT platform. And we hope to have some data on the effects of this approach in 2020. And the requirements of the course, 3 times 2, so that's 6 days of intensive training, introduction to prevention, about milieus, narratives, ways to and from extremism, a lot of exercises, and the instructors are psychologists, researchers, and existing mentors as the training goes on. And again, implementation support. Now, how does that look in practice, just very briefly? I have a case here that a friend of mine who's no longer, as I think Claudia explained, I have a practitioner's background. Is that correct? Good. He has a practitioner's background also, but has become a bureaucrat like myself. So we work together now. But he was working in one of the larger municipalities of of Denmark before, and he had this case of young adult woman returning after having tried to reach a foreign conflict zone. She didn't make it, so she was turned back and possibly facing trial. She didn't know at the time. She refused to hear any talk of having a mentor. So the coordinator looked into creating a match between that particular girl or young woman. And it so happened that they had a social mentor available that also had some insight into religious beliefs. There is a point to that later. And the mentor ended up working with both the young woman and her father. So what were the concerns or the worries? Well, the young woman expressed extremely dogmatic views based on Islam, in this case. Except for the father, she had a very bad relation with her family. In particular, her stepmother. And she turned out to be very manipulative. And I should probably add, it took 2 months before they got to this point. So a lot of meeting, a lot of talking, before they actually got to make the plan. Now, what works? She actually shows interest in talking about her views and beliefs, and she has a reasonably good relationship with the father. So what would be a goal? An expanded or balanced view of how life can be lived, and a broader relationship with her family. So the agreement, and this is done between mentor and mentee, so it's a mutual plan, was to introduce more open ways of discussing religion and beliefs. The mentor was able to do that because he also had some insights. It's not a religious mentor, important to underline that. It's a social mentor. And together with the woman, or with the mentor, slowly increase the amount of time spent with the family through activity and so forth planned. Now, they worked on just over a year to get to this point. And as you see, the WS refers to the wheel of skills that you saw before. So there's a 5 and a 10. We can just go back and check them afterwards. And there's 1 on relation. Now the relationship with the family was where's it at? Wait, here we are. The skill on being part of good and close relations was then identified as important. Finding the most efficient, pragmatic approach when you want to discuss beliefs and convictions with someone, and being able to navigate in the system around you were identified along with the mentee as the important goals to her plan.